Hey everybody, Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com, filling in for this edition of the Terrible Podcast. Obviously, Dave's away. Thoughts and prayers with him as his dad passed away, as I'm sure you've heard by now. He'll be back later this week, though, I think, in time for the start of camp. But today, obviously, no usual Terrible Podcast with him and myself. So I'll be doing a kind of fill in for it, a little talk to the tape. I know you guys really like it. I really enjoy doing it. I absolutely cannot wait to get to do this throughout the season. I kind of picked up doing these kind of things as the year went along, a little later in the year. Really enjoyed doing them. The feedback I got was tremendous, and have a lot of fun with it. I like being able to talk and go through these plays with you guys as well. Our topic today is, kind of focusing on camp battles because this is camp week. Players report Thursday, first practice Friday. We'll be there, of course. Our focus is some of the camp battles, and I think one of the bigger ones when you talk about starters, because there aren't a lot of starting spots up for grabs. This roster's kind of set in terms of that. But I think one of the areas that is up for grabs is the starting slot position. And I and other people have been talking about this basically since he got drafted. And of course, I'm talking about JuJu Smith-Schuster taken in the second round out of USC. And can he push Eli Rogers for the starting slot job? Now, I've talked up JuJu quite a bit because I like his game. I like the way he carries himself. And obviously, as a second round pick, those guys get on the field pretty quickly these days. A decade ago, he might have sat, especially in Pittsburgh. But nowadays, you get on the field right away. If Artie Burns can get on the field year one, as raw as he was, JuJu Smith-Schuster, who's a lot more refined, even though he was just 20 years old when drafted, he can get on the field as well. So what I wanted to talk about today is just go over a couple plays of the nuances of the slot position, and because it is tough. And the one thing we have to recognize is when you talk about the slot position, and one reason why Eli Rogers might have a leg up, and does have a leg up going into camp, is he knows the position. It's extremely difficult to have in the NFL. There has to be a lot of trust and confidence from your quarterback because you're going to be targeted a lot on third downs and in red zone work and in big time situations. And you have to rise to that challenge. There's a lot of information you have to process, and if you're wrong and you make a mistake, even a slight one, as you're going to see on the first play we're going to show you here, it can create a really negative outcome. So let's get into it right now. And let me move this search bar away. And actually, I wanted to pull up the right play. It's probably a good idea to start with that. I wanted this one. And this is from week 1 against Washington, which is a game we don't reference too often. I feel like it happened 2 years ago. But from week 1, the week 1 victory. And Steelers didn't start good this game. I think Washington went up 6-0. There was an interception here, which we're going to look at. I'll show it to you from the aerial view to start. And then we'll kind of look at it a little bit further. Here's Eli. You can kind of see on the left side here in the slot. It's zone coverage, so Rogers does what he's supposed to do, or at least appears what he's supposed to do, is settle down, get square, show his numbers to the quarterback. But you'll see it here. That throws a little more to the outside of Rogers than where he settled. So I'm guessing Ben was right here, and Rogers didn't either settle in the right spot and needed to come over a little bit, or he needed to start running away and being able to be a moving target as he catches his pass, and shouldn't have been as stationary as he was. So the ball is a little outside his frame. He's got to try to adjust for it. It clanks off his hands, up in the air, leads to an interception and a big return. So we'll watch it again from the aerial view. Again, I don't have the best idea of exactly what went wrong, but you can see those little differences of him maybe not settling in the right spot, or not, being able to slide over to get himself open a little bit better and away from the linebacker. And that throw, it doesn't miss by much. It misses by a foot. But, in the NFL, if you're off by a foot and you're not perfect with that route, especially in the slot, it's going to cause a lot of headaches for you and your offense. So we'll look at it one more time here. And we'll look at it twice. I'll run it through full, then I'll kind of break it down if you guys want to kind of see a little, not frame by frame, but, slowing it down a little bit. So again, just week 1, it's you get it from Rogers, really playing the NFL first time. But ball off his hands, interception, goes the other way. So, you got to be perfect with your routes. You got to know when to settle. You got to know your man zone rules, settle versus zone, run versus man, and you got to play fast. You got to play perfect. And it didn't happen there, and it creates a turnover. So, that's stuff that I think Rodgers got better at and certainly corrected throughout the year. But when you look at a guy like JuJu Smith-Schuster and what he has to do, he's got to be perfect on that. He's got to know where he has to settle, where that ball is going to be thrown to, not just the general area, but as precise as possible, outside shoulder, where that ball is going to be located at. And that's all going to come through reps, and that's going to be important. But it's unlikely to be an automatic thing. And that's, again, when you say that Eli Rodgers has the leg up going into this thing, because Rodgers has made those mistakes, he's learned from them, and he's not going to make them again. For a guy like, JuJu, he's going to make some of those mistakes. It's going to happen probably, at least, hopefully in the preseason and not the regular season. But it's a learning experience, of things you have to learn from. So we're going to go to the next game here. Let me pull up what player I want to look at, because I want to look at some of the positives, too. This isn't just going to be a negative, Eli kind of thing. That would be dumb to do. These are just traits you have to have in the slot and things you have to do well. And I'll probably talk about this battle, obviously, a lot during camp, but, I think there's a lot of things I want to break down with this, because there's some traits that Eli Rodgers has that are going to be, obviously, makes him a worthy candidate in the slot and why he's been playing there. This is actually going to be one of the big reasons why. We're going to show you this play here. But then JuJu Smith-Schuster has some traits in the slot that I think are really worth talking about and would give him an advantage over Eli. It's very interesting. I don't want to expound on this too much, but it's interesting because these aren't two guys of the same, cut from the same cloth. They're not two small, shifty slot guys and just who's slightly better than the other. They're two very different skill sets, obviously. Eli Rodgers, who is, to be vague about it, the shifty, traditional slot guy, whereas JuJu Smith-Schuster is a very different mold where he's not going to be as quick twitch, but he's more physical, he's got better hands, he can be more combative at catch points, and probably a more dynamic guy after the catch. So it's really interesting to see these different skill sets, because you're not choosing, the not lesser of two evils, but the guy that's slightly better. It's two different ideals for what the slot position is. Then you have to weigh those ideals versus, obviously, how they play. But enough about that. We're going to look at this play against the Colts. It's later in the year, so Eli's gotten a bunch of reps at this point and was a lot better for it. It's a little harder to see it aerial. We'll just kind of run it through, then I'll show you guys in the end zone cam, because we get a good look at it. But obviously, playing in the slot is all about separation and being able to get open. You're facing smaller, shiftier, similar type nickel corners, and you have to be able to beat them either off the line or at the top of your route. And I think Eli does the former here, beating this nickel corner off the line really well. You're going to see Eli set him up outside, again, using that head fake, using that shoulder fake, trying to convince the corner he's going to stem his route to the outside. And then he's going to use his hands well, be able to kind of swim over the nickel corner, come back inside, and you see all this separation that he gets. I mean, there's a several-yard gap here between the corner and Rodgers, wide open middle of the field, a nice move in the open field to shake the safety, and it's a huge gain. I forget how many yards he gains here, but 30 some odd yards. We'll look at it from the aerial perspective. Again, here's Eli here against the nickel corner. You're going to sell the route outside, get that corner thinking you're going outside, swim over, and with the Colts playing man coverage too high over the top, this middle of the field is wide open. So man coverage, you got to beat your guy. He does. Get some nice yak out of it too, and it's a huge gain. So we'll look at it again from the end zone angle. So that's what Eli Rodgers does well. Obviously, he's pretty twitchy. He can win at the top of his route. He can, he has the ability to win off the line as well. Doesn't see a ton of press man, because usually he's off ball and there's stacks and stuff like that. But he's a twitchy guy. He can get open, and that's obviously a huge trait and something I preach about all the time. For receivers, is the best receiver is an open one, and Rodgers, as the season progressed, definitely got a whole lot better, especially in that regard. Last play we're going to look at today, let me pull it up here. I have to go with my search function to find it. This play's one that does not get talked about nearly enough as it should. Not nearly enough. Because this one, we think about the Antonio Brown, obviously great touchdown against Baltimore. Was this week 15? or week 16, excuse me. And, that was obviously an incredible play, an insane play, and one that might go down in history. But it probably doesn't happen if Eli Rogers does not make this play, several earlier, with under a minute left from the game. Just run it through. Here's Eli up here, and then we'll talk about it. Because I think the other element, and this is true really for any receiver, it doesn't matter if you're playing in the slot, it doesn't matter if you're playing the X, the Z, if you're a back, a tight end, whoever, but this is something that a guy like JuJu, I think, does really well on tape. I really saw evidence of it at USC, but it's going to have to continue. It's even going to have to get better in the NFL. It's the scramble drill. You have to know your scramble drill rules. You have to never quit on the play. Even though Ben has evolved as a more traditional pocket passer, and I think finally the NFL is starting to realize that fact, that he is not the sandlot Ben that he was a decade ago. You're still going to get some of those scramble drills, or just naturally for any offense where the play breaks down and you're going to have to continue your route. So I don't know if we get a great look from the end zone angle, but obviously this pressure immediately flushes Ben outside the pocket, and Eli's going to continue his route and make a tremendous catch at the end. We'll get a much better look at the top view of it. Obviously the timing of this throw it's a timing route, but it's disrupted by the pressure, so Ben flushes out. Now it turns into a scramble drill. Now here's Eli on the back side of where Ben's going. Eli was lined up to the left, Ben's flushed to the right. He's now working back to get in Ben's cone of vision, working over the linebacker and finding the soft spot in coverage. If he just sits here and settles here, the window's closed, Ben's not going to throw across his body. There's no option there. So Eli's going to just continue his route, find grass, and that's huge. Again, zone coverage, find grass. And then he makes an insane catch, too. He's got good body control. I think that's something we don't talk about much with Eli Rogers, is where I think he struggles with combative catches because he's got a smaller frame, smaller hands, and doesn't have the catch radius. He makes up for it, at least in some regard, by having really good body control and adjusting to poorly thrown footballs. And you see that on display here. So again, it's a timing route ball. Should be out by now in theory, but obviously that's not always how these games work. And Eli, finishes his route. There's no quit. There's no hesitation. He doesn't start to slow down, and then it processes, and he goes, I got to continue this play. He gets his eyes to Ben right here. He sees Ben's, flushed out. It's becoming a bit of a scramble drill. Now he's working over this linebacker, getting over the top, finding grass. Now you have all this room for Ben to make this throw. The throw's not perfect. Eli makes a tremendous catch. I'm not even sure if Ben thought it was going to be a catch. I think as soon as he threw it, he kind of regretted it and thought he missed the mark. He's jumping in the air like in anticipation and a little maybe frustration, thinking he had, botched the throw. And Eli bails him out with a tremendous catch, and that gets the Steelers in the one in the field goal range. Remember, it was a 3-point game. Baltimore lead at that point, so it just got the team in the field goal range. So you had a little sigh of relief there, or breath of relief. I don't know I'm not good with words. Almost got through this video without sounding stupid. But it then set up the final drive, or the final couple plays of that drive, to let AB be AB and reach across the goal line and win the game for Pittsburgh, win the division ultimately as well. So, there's good with Eli, there's bad with Eli. I don't want it to be, this isn't a video that's supposed to be Eli centered. It's talking about the position more in general and what it demands. And I think it's going to demand guys that are good at the top of their route, guys that can create, space, use their leverage to their advantage, and really sell their route well. Being in the slot's kind of like, and I'm thinking this off the cuff, and this might not be the best comparison, but it's kind of like being a con man, where you have to deceive. Maybe a magician is a better word, but that felt a little too cliche. But you have to be able to get the defender to think you're doing one thing, and then once he commits, you go the other way with it. And I think Eli does that pretty well. And there's other examples I haven't shown that I think illustrate that. And if there's one area of JuJu Smith-Schuster's game that needs that improvement, needs improvement in general, it's probably him being more nuanced in his routes and stemming his routes better. And so that's going to be the big thing for him, because that's what Eli does better than JuJu, obviously selling his routes, stemming his routes. And outside of him having experience in the system, I think JuJu's got him beat almost everywhere else. He's a more dynamic player. He's a more physical player. He's got better hands. He's going to make more combative catches. That's something Eli really struggles in when he's got to contest and make those catches, either downfield or over the middle. And I think that JuJu's more dynamic, like I said, and obviously he's a second-round pick. So there's a lot of things that JuJu does better than Eli already without having to taking a snap yet. That is going to compel the team to want to give him a look in the slot. But what Eli does better is huge as well in terms of being able to separate the top of his route and get space. And that's a number one trait for me across the board. So it's really interesting to watch these two different, like I said, ideals go at it, of Eli with the conventional mold and JuJu Smith-Schuster with a different mold, and who's going to win out. I don't know who's going to win, obviously. I've never said that it's definitely going to be JuJu Smith-Schuster. I think he's got a really good chance to win this job, week one, or get snaps and increase those snaps as the year goes on. But, I go into it with a clean slate. We'll see what happens. I don't have any preconceived notions or assumptions before we even hit day one of camp. And even, we got to go through, throughout the preseason and see how, a guy like JuJu matures and progresses. Because you're going to take your lumps. You're going to have bad days. It happens. You just want to see how a guy bounces back from that. So those are some of the thoughts on the slot position and the important traits you have to have, and what JuJu Smith-Schuster is going to have to consistently show to take the job, and what Eli Rogers will have to continue to do along with getting better in a couple other areas that we mentioned to keep his job. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments about the slot position, about the battle between Eli and JuJu, what other position battles you're interested in watching, especially as it pertains to the starting spots. So like I said, this is kind of the big one when it comes to the starters. And be sure to stick with Depot throughout this week. We're starting camp this Friday, the first day of practice. We'll, of course, have our practice reports as we have had for the last 2 years. Players report on Thursday. They'll do their conditioning test. Tomlin will have his first, mini press conference. Players will get interviewed. We'll get some good information there. Have some great content, already and throughout this week, even before players report on Steelers Depot. Have a great interview with cornerback Mike Hilton that's up on the site right now. Tomorrow, is it Tuesday? We're going to have an interview with Brian Allen that our good buddy Ron Lippick did. So we got a lot of the DBs covered this week. Some other really good content we have coming up, finishing up a couple series and things like that. So really excited for this time of year. It's a great time of year. Happy the off season is over. Finally, can write about some stuff that really matters and get back into football. So thank you guys for coming along with us, and get ready for camp. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.